On July 14, 1990, at 6:47 p.m., a payphone rang at a Chevron station in Holbrook, Arizona. Linda Dawson was dialing her parents' house in Wilmette, a suburb of Chicago. Her mother, Patricia Connolly, picked up. The call lasted 4 minutes. Linda said she and Michael were driving Route 66, that the car was running great, that the desert was beautiful but hot. She said they'd stop somewhere for the night and reach California tomorrow. She said she loved her mom and that everything would work out. Patricia Connolly would replay that conversation in her head hundreds of times. Her daughter's voice had sounded happy, maybe a little tired, but happy. That was the last time anyone heard Linda Dawson's voice. Michael Dawson was 23 years old. He worked as a mechanic at his uncle's shop on the south side of Chicago. A kid from Bridgeport, a working-class neighborhood, grease under his nails, old jeans, plain talk. His father, Walter Dawson, had spent 30 years at a steel mill. His mother, Janice, was a nurse at a city hospital. Linda Connolly was 21. She was a junior at the University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine. Her father, Richard Connolly, owned a chain of car dealerships in Chicago's northern suburbs. Her mother, Patricia, sat on the board of the local opera and a charity foundation. They met in March of 1989 at a gas station. Linda had stopped to fill up on her way to school. Her dad's old Buick was making a weird noise when she turned the wheel. Michael worked at a shop across the street. He walked over, listened, told her it was the power steering pump, and offered to fix it for half price if she'd grab coffee with him. She said yes. Richard Connolly found out about his daughter's relationship 2 months later. His reaction was predictable. He ran a background check on Michael and found a juvenile record. At 17, Michael had been involved in a car theft with 2 friends. The sentence had been expunged, but the record remained. Connolly forbade his daughter from seeing Michael. He threatened to cut off her tuition. He said this kid from Bridgeport was a loser, a petty criminal, a gold digger. Linda kept seeing Michael in secret. On April 12, 1990, they got married at City Hall in Gary, Indiana. The witnesses were a buddy of Michael's from the shop and his wife. Linda wore a simple white dress she'd bought for $40 at a thrift store. Michael wore his best suit, his only suit. Linda's parents found out a week later. She called them herself. Patricia cried. Richard said nothing. Then he said, "You're no longer my daughter," and hung up. The newlyweds rented a small apartment on the south side of Chicago. 2 rooms, a kitchenette, a view of a fire escape. Michael worked 60 hours a week at the shop. Linda got a part-time job at a vet clinic and kept going to school at night. Money was tight, but they made it work. Michael's pride and joy was his convertible A 1968 Ford Mustang, dark blue with white racing stripes. He'd found the car in a junkyard when he was 19. Rusted body, dead engine, torn up interior. Over 4 years, he'd rebuilt it from scratch. New motor, new transmission, reupholstered seats, fresh paint, every part done by hand. That was the car they took on their honeymoon. The route was Linda's idea. Route 66, the legendary Mother Road, 2,400 miles from Chicago to Santa Monica. Neon-lit motels, roadside diners, endless desert. The romance of the open American highway. They left on July 9, 1990, a Monday at 6 in the morning. Michael took 2 weeks off. Linda had her summer break between semesters. First stop, Springfield, Illinois. They took a photo by the Abraham Lincoln statue. Second night, St. Louis, Missouri. The Gateway Arch at sunset. Third night, Tulsa, Oklahoma. They called home every other day. Linda called her mom. Michael called his folks. Quick conversations from payphones at gas stations. Everything's good. Heading west. It's hot. It's beautiful. Miss you. July 11th, Amarillo, Texas. July 12th, Albuquerque, New Mexico. July 13th, Gallup, near the Arizona border. July 14th at 6:47 p.m. The last call from Holbrook. After that, silence. On July 17th, Patricia Connolly started to worry. 3 days without a call. She phoned Michael's parents. Janice Dawson said she hadn't heard anything either, but figured the kids were just busy. California, the ocean, the honeymoon. On July 18th, Patricia called again. Still nothing. On July 19th, Richard Connolly, despite everything he'd said about his daughter and her husband, hired a private investigator. He told his wife, "I just want to know she's alive." The PI contacted the Holbrook police, the couple's last known location. Records from the Chevron station confirmed that on July 14th, around 7 p.m., someone had used the payphone. There were no security cameras at the station. The cashier working that evening remembered a young couple in a dark blue convertible. Pretty girl with long hair, guy in a white t-shirt. They bought gas, water, and chips, paid cash. The girl went to the payphone while the guy filled up the car. Then they drove off, headed west. No one ever saw them again. On July 21, 1990, a missing persons case was officially opened. Michael and Linda Dawson, last known location, Holbrook, Arizona. Presumed direction, west, along Route 66 toward California. Arizona police contacted California police. Hospitals, morgues, jails were checked. Nothing. A dark blue 1968 Ford Mustang with Illinois plates nowhere to be found. Not in motel parking lots, not in accident reports, not in patrol logs. The car and its passengers had vanished, as if they'd dissolved into the desert somewhere between Holbrook and the Pacific Ocean. Richard Connolly spent over $100,000 searching for his daughter in the first 3 months. Private investigator Harold Mason, a former Chicago PD detective, personally drove the entire route from Holbrook to Santa Monica. He stopped at every motel, showed photos at every diner, talked to every gas station owner along the way. Result: zero. Nobody had seen a young couple in a dark blue convertible after Holbrook. Mason widened the search. Maybe they'd turned off Route 66. Maybe they went north toward the Grand Canyon. Maybe south toward the Mexican border. He checked the border crossings at Nogales, Yuma, San Luis. Nothing. Not a single record of a Ford Mustang with Illinois plates. By September 1990, Mason had run out of leads. Michael's parents couldn't afford a private investigator. Walter Dawson took 2 weeks off without pay and drove to Arizona himself. He slept in his car, ate at cheap diners, showed his son's photo to everyone he met. He hit up every auto shop in Flagstaff, Kingman. Needles figured maybe Michael had stopped to fix the car, maybe something broke down. Nothing. Janice Dawson stayed in Chicago. Every day she called the police. Every day they told her the same thing. We're working on it. We'll call you back. Nobody ever called back. In October 1990, Detective Ray Thornton of Mojave County, California, received the Dawson case from his colleagues in Arizona. A formal transfer of jurisdiction: if the couple disappeared somewhere between Holbrook and California, it happened in his county. Thornton reviewed the file. 20 pages of statements, a dozen photos, 3 pages of the PI's report. He spoke with the parents. First the Connollys, then the Dawsons. He made notes in his pad. Then he called a buddy in the auto theft unit. Michael Dawson's juvenile record was the first thing Thornton zeroed in on. A 17-year-old kid involved in a car theft. His accomplices, Ricky Santos and David Novak, buddies from the neighborhood. The car was found abandoned a day later. All 3 got picked up. Michael, being the youngest and having a clean record, got probation. Santos and Novak each got a year in juvie. Thornton talked to the officer who'd worked the case. The guy said Michael was a follower. He didn't come up with the idea to steal the car, just couldn't say no to his friends. Typical Bridgeport story. But Thornton was interested in something else. A guy who'd already been involved in stealing cars. A guy who married a rich girl against her parents' wishes. A guy with no money, but a wife whose family owned car dealerships. Richard Connolly never changed his daughter's insurance. Even after the falling out, even after the wedding to Michael, Linda stayed on the family policies. Health insurance. Life insurance. Richard said he just never got around to updating the paperwork. The policy on Linda's life was worth $250,000. Richard Connolly was listed as the beneficiary. But if Linda and Michael were declared dead and Michael died after his wife, by law the inheritance would first pass to him, then to his relatives. Thornton made a note. By November 1990, the detective had a working theory. Michael Dawson, a mechanic with a juvie record, married a girl from a wealthy family. They went on their honeymoon. Somewhere in the desert, something went wrong. A fight. Maybe he found out they weren't getting the Connolly money. Maybe he realized his wife was his only shot at an insurance payout. Thornton pictured it like this: a stop on the shoulder, a blow to the head, a body in the trunk, the car across the border into Mexico. Down there, you could sell a Mustang for good money, start a new life under a different name. It was a theory. It made sense. It explained everything. Except for one thing. There wasn't a shred of evidence. Thornton's theory fell apart in December. Mexican police, at the request of American colleagues, ran a search through their databases. No Ford Mustang with Illinois plates had crossed the border in July, August, or September of 1990. No American citizen matching Michael Dawson's description had been detained or documented anywhere in northern Mexico. If Michael had fled to Mexico, he'd done it without his car and without leaving a trace. Thornton tried a different angle. Maybe Michael hadn't run. Maybe both of them were dead. Foul play. A robbery on the highway. Drifters, bikers, carjackers. The desert had plenty of predators. A couple in an expensive car, out-of-state plates, clearly not locals. Easy targets. But this version had problems too. If someone had killed them for the car, why hadn't the car surfaced anywhere? A '68 Mustang in perfect condition. That kind of thing doesn't just disappear. Someone would have tried to sell it. Someone would have noticed, unless the killer buried the car along with the bodies. In January 1991, Richard Connolly hired a second private investigator. This one specialized in cold cases. He spent 3 months re-interviewing witnesses, reanalyzing reports, studying maps of the area. He came up with a list of possible dump sites, places where someone could hide a car and 2 bodies without being seen. There were dozens of such spots. Abandoned mines, dry washes, canyons. The desert between Holbrook and the California border was vast, empty, and kept its secrets well. The investigator proposed organizing a search. Helicopters, ground crews, metal detectors. Cost about $80,000 with no guarantee of results. Richard Connolly agreed. The search lasted 2 weeks. They found 3 wrecked cars, one of which had been sitting there since the 60s. Human remains were discovered in one, a man who disappeared in 1972, not the Dawsons. By March 1991, the second investigator, like the first, had hit a dead end. A year passed. Then another, and another. The Dawson case went into the cold case files. Official status, missing persons, whereabouts unknown. Unofficially, probably dead, bodies never found. Janice Dawson never stopped believing her son was alive. She told neighbors, friends, relatives, "Michael's out there somewhere. He just can't come back. Something's keeping him there." Walter Dawson said nothing. He went back to working at the steel mill. Every night, after his shift, he sat on the porch with a beer and stared at the street, waiting for a dark blue Mustang that never came. Patricia Connolly started going to church. Every Sunday, she lit a candle for her daughter. She prayed for a sign, for an answer, for anything. She never got one. Richard Connolly threw himself into work. He opened 2 more dealerships, expanded into Indiana, then Michigan. At night, when he couldn't sleep, he sat in his office and looked at a photo of Linda. The same photo he'd told his wife to throw away right after the wedding. He never threw it away himself. The Neon Oasis Motel sat on a stretch of Route 66 between Needles and Barstow, right in the heart of the Mojave Desert, 40 miles to the nearest town. Nothing around but sand, rocks, and power lines disappearing over the horizon. In 1990, it was a popular spot. 16 rooms in a single-story building painted turquoise, a restaurant with a 24-hour kitchen, a 2-pump gas station. And the main attraction, a guitar-shaped pool, 40 feet long, lined with blue tile. The neon sign above the entrance lit up every night. The Neon Oasis Vacancy, pink and green. You could see it from 5 miles away. The motel had been owned by Silas Vance since 1970. Silas Vance was born in 1938 in Bakersfield, California, only child in a family of farmers. His father grew cotton, his mother ran the household. Nothing remarkable in his bio: school, the army, factory work in Los Angeles. He was never married, never had kids, never had so much as a run-in with the law. In 1970, at 32, Vance bought an abandoned motel on Route 66. The previous owner had died, and the heirs wanted to unload the property fast. Vance paid cash where a factory worker got that kind of money. Nobody asked. He moved into the motel and started fixing it up himself. Repainted the walls, patched the roof, replaced the plumbing in every room, built the pool, designed the guitar shape himself, poured the concrete himself, laid the tile himself. By 1975, the Neon Oasis was one of the best motels on that stretch of road. The folks in the nearest town, Essex, knew Vance as a quiet, polite man. He came into town once a week for groceries and mail. Always said hello to the clerks, always thanked them for his change, sometimes donated money to the local church, sometimes helped neighbors with repairs free of charge, just being neighborly. A loner, but not a weirdo, the owner of the grocery store, Doris Henderson, would later say. You know the type. They don't need anybody. They're fine on their own, but that doesn't mean there's something wrong with them. Vance never raised his voice, never argued with customers, never turned away travelers, even when the rooms were full. He'd set people up on cots in the back and charge next to nothing. A good man, they said about him. On July 14, 1990, around 9 in the evening, a dark blue Ford Mustang with Illinois plates pulled off Route 66 into the Neon Oasis parking lot. Michael Dawson was behind the wheel. Linda was next to him. They'd been driving almost 3 hours since the call from Holbrook. The sun had set. The temperature had dropped from 104 to the high 80s, but the air was still hot. The car's AC didn't work. Michael hadn't gotten around to fixing it before the trip. Vance was standing by the office entrance when they pulled up. A short, stocky man of 52 in a plaid shirt and jeans, thinning hair, tanned face, calm eyes. "Good evening," he said. "Room for the night?" Later, when investigators reconstructed the events, they pieced that night together from evidence and diary entries. Michael and Linda took room 14 to the corner unit with a view of the pool. $28 a night, breakfast included. Vance personally walked them to the door, showed them how the AC worked, brought extra towels himself. Linda wrote in her diary, "Cute motel. The pool is amazing. The owner's a little odd, but polite." That word, odd, was the first warning no one read in time. That night, Linda swam in the pool. The sky above the desert was black and full of stars, nothing like she'd ever seen in Chicago. Michael sat on the edge with a beer and watched his wife. Vance watched them from his office window. The next morning, July 15th, the couple decided to stay another night. It was Linda's call. She wrote in her diary, "Michael wanted to keep going, but I talked him into staying. It's so quiet here, no rush to be anywhere. One more day." Vance gave them a discount $20 instead of $28. During the day, Michael worked on the car. He noticed the engine was overheating, normal for an old Mustang in the desert, but something that needed attention. Vance offered to help. He had a workshop behind the motel, tools, spare parts. Michael took him up on it. They spent 3 hours together under the hood. Vance turned out to be a solid mechanic. He serviced all the guests' cars himself when they broke down. They replaced the thermostat, topped off the coolant, checked the fan belt. Michael told his wife later, "Good guy, knows his stuff." That evening, July 15th, Vance invited the newlyweds to dinner. He grilled steaks, corn, baked potatoes. The three of them ate on the patio behind the motel, watching the sunset over the desert. Vance didn't say much, mostly listened, asked questions. He asked about the wedding, about their families, about their plans for the future. Linda told him about her parents, about the falling out with her father, about how she and Michael had eloped to Gary. Vance listened, nodded, smiled. "Love," he said at one point. "Real love is rare. Most people never find it, but you two found each other." Linda later wrote in her diary, "Weird compliment, but nice." On July 16th, the couple was supposed to check out. But that morning, Michael discovered a problem. The car keys were gone. He was positive he'd left them on the nightstand in the room, but the nightstand was empty. They searched the room twice, checked pockets, bags, the car, nothing. Vance helped look. He seemed worried, even upset. He said he had tools for emergency starts, could get the car going without the key, but it would take time. The couple stayed another night. Free of charge, Vance said. It was the least he could do. Entry from Linda's diary, July 16th evening. The keys turned up. Michael says they were in his jacket, but I know I saw them on the nightstand. I don't get how he could forget. He's been out of it the last few days. Or is it just me? That was the first crack. Linda Dawson's diary, a notebook with a soft leather cover, 96 pages, was found in the glove compartment of the Ford Mustang 34 years later. The dry desert climate and the airtight seal of the concrete tomb had preserved it almost perfectly. The ink had faded slightly, but every word was legible. Investigators studied the entries cover to cover, 63 filled pages from the first day of the honeymoon to the last, cut off mid-sentence. The story that diary told was nothing like what anyone had suspected in 1990. The first entries. Pure happiness. July 9th, the day they left. We did it. We're on the road. Chicago's behind us. Everything's ahead. M is smiling like I've never seen. I think he's happier than I am. July 10th, Springfield. Photo by the Lincoln statue. M joked that we're free now, like slaves. Dumb, but I laughed. July 11th, St. Louis. The arch is huge. We stood under it and felt small. A good feeling. Everything's big, we're small, and that's okay. July 12th, Tulsa. Hot. M keeps bitching about the AC not working. I told him stick your head out the window. He said, then you stick yours out too. We both did. Wind in our faces. Happiness. July 13th, Albuquerque. The desert keeps getting prettier. Red rocks, insane sunsets. M promises the ocean will be even better. I don't believe him, but I want to see it. July 14th, before Holbrook. Called Mom. She sounded sad. I know she misses me. I miss her too. But I don't regret it, any of it. The entry from July 15th, the first one written at the Neon Oasis. Stopped at a weird place, a motel in the middle of nowhere. Guitar-shaped pool M. Loves it. The owner's name is Silas, older guy, lives alone, very polite. He looks at us like we remind him of something. What I don't know. Went swimming at night, stars overhead. M sat on the edge and watched. I thought, this is it. This is happiness. Remember this moment. July 16th. The tone shifts. Weird morning. The car keys disappeared. I remember exactly. They were on the nightstand. I saw them before bed. But M says he found them in his jacket. How'd they get there? Silas helped look. Tried really hard, almost too hard. Staying another night. Free, Silas insisted. Feels awkward. We're strangers. But M says, don't turn down a gift. That same evening. Talked to Silas while Emsu was working on the car. Silas asked about our wedding. I told him City Hall, thrift store dress, 2 witnesses. He listened carefully. Then he said, a real wedding isn't about the dress or the ceremony. A real wedding is a promise that lasts forever. Strange words, but beautiful. July 17th, anxiety. Can't sleep. Last night while Emsu was in the shower, Silas knocked on the door, brought us a bottle of wine, a gift, he said. I thanked him. He didn't leave, just stood in the doorway, staring at me. Then he said, your husband is a lucky man. I hope he knows that. I shut the door. My heart was pounding. M asked who came by. I said, nobody, wrong room. I don't know why I lied, just didn't want to explain. Later that day, found a photo in my bag. A Polaroid, me sleeping taken at night, in the room. I don't remember M taking any pictures of me. Asked him about it. He said, what photo? I showed him. He went pale. Said, I didn't take that. Then, who did? July 18th, panic. I want to leave, right now, but M says the car won't start. Something with the battery. Silas said we need a new one. He can order it from town. It'll be here tomorrow. Tomorrow. One more night. I told M, I don't like it here. Something's off about this place. He looked at me like I was crazy. Said, you're just tired from the road, maybe. But where did that photo come from? That evening, Silas brought dinner. Said I can't charge you when you're stuck here because of me. Because of him. Why? Because of him. M ate. I couldn't. Silas watched us eat. Well, watched M eat. He barely looked at me. Only at M, or am I imagining things? July 19th, suspicion. Got up before M this morning. He was still asleep. Went to the car to check if it really wouldn't start. Turned the key. Engine fired right up on the first try. Went back to the room. Told M. He said, no way, it wouldn't start yesterday. Went to check. The car wouldn't start. He tried 5 times. Nothing. I was standing right there. I saw it. M said, you imagined it. Probably didn't turn the key all the way. I didn't imagine it. During the day, found an earring under the rug in the room, a woman's, not mine. Showed M. He said, must have been left by previous guests. The maid missed it. What maid? There's no maid here. Silas cleans the rooms himself. M looked at me and said, Linda, you're overthinking things. I'm overthinking things. July 20th. The crack becomes a chasm. Woke up at 3 in the morning. M wasn't in bed. Went outside. Saw him by the pool talking to Silas. Quietly, I couldn't hear the words, but they were laughing. When M came back, I pretended to be asleep. He got in bed, turned away. Why didn't he tell me he went out? Why was he talking to Silas in the middle of the night? That morning, asked M where he was last night. He said, I didn't go anywhere. Slept the whole night. He lied to my face. I saw him by the pool with Silas. Why would he lie? July 21st, the final pages. Silas pulled me aside while Emsu was messing with the car again. He said, I need to tell you something about your husband. I listened. He said he'd seen Emsa's documents when he checked in, saw the record of his probation, said he looked into it. Em had done time for stealing cars, said Emsa isn't who he pretends to be. I said, I know about the probation. Silas looked surprised. Then he said, but you don't know everything. You don't know what he says when you're not around. I asked, what does he say? Silas went quiet. Then he said, ask him yourself. Ask him what he's planning to do when you get to California. I didn't understand. Planning to do? Silas walked away. Left me standing by the pool. The final entry. July 21st evening. Can't think about anything else. What is M planning? Why did Silas say that? What does he know? I looked at M during dinner tonight. He was eating, joking, smiling, and I was thinking, do I even know this person? Probation, car theft. He never told me the details. I never asked. What else hasn't he told me? The earring under the rug, the photo he didn't take, the car that starts and doesn't start, the late night talks with Silas. If someone wanted to get rid of their wife in the middle of the desert, you couldn't find a better place. God, what am I writing? This is M, my husband. He loves me. Or doesn't he? Silas said. The entry cuts off mid-sentence. The next 33 pages of the diary remained blank. 7,000 characters. Gotovo. Devot Chast 5. Teper Perviduf Su Chast 5. On July 22, 1990, the Neon Oasis Motel welcomed new guests. A family from Texas parents and 2 kids stopped for one night on their way to Los Angeles. They took room 12. Room 14, the corner unit with the pool view, was closed for repairs. A do not disturb sign hung on the door handle. Silas Vance looked the same as always, polite, calm, helpful. He showed the family their room, brought extra pillows for the kids, recommended a local diner 20 miles west. Nobody suspected a thing. In August 1990, Detective Ray Thornton of the Mojave County Police drove along Route 66, checking motels between Needles and Barstow. He stopped at the Neon Oasis on August 23rd, showed Vance photos of Michael and Linda Dawson, asked if he'd seen the couple. Vance looked closely, shook his head. A lot of people come through, he said. Faces blur together. But this couple, no, I don't remember them. Thornton wrote in his notebook, Neon Oasis Motel, owner S. Vance, did not see suspects. He thanked him for his cooperation and left. The guitar-shaped pool remained the motel's main attraction until 1996. That year, California introduced new water restrictions. Drought, 3rd year running. Motel and hotel owners got orders to cut back. Vance closed the pool indefinitely. The blue tile faded. The water evaporated, leaving white stains on the walls. Leaves and sand clogged the drain. By 1998, the pool had become a pit, empty, filthy, useless. In the spring of 2000, Vance hired a crew from Barstow for property renovation. Official reason, the pool was too expensive to maintain, easier to fill it in and put in a flower bed. 3 workers showed up with a truckload of gravel and bags of cement. The job took 4 days. Foreman Jose Martinez would later recall, weird job. Usually people want to build a pool, not bury one, but the old man paid cash, didn't haggle. His business. Martinez didn't know that under the first layer of concrete at the bottom of the pool, there was already another layer, poured 10 years earlier. Hiding what Vance had put there in July of 1990, the workers filled in the hole, leveled the surface, planted bushes and flowers. Vance picked the plants himself, oleander, lavender, yucca, desert species that didn't need much water. By summer 2000, a garden bloomed where the pool had been. New motel guests had no idea that beneath their feet lay 40 feet of concrete and earth. In 2005, Silas Vance sold the Neon Oasis. He was 67. His health was failing, arthritis, heart problems, chronic fatigue. The motel business was getting worse. After Interstate 40 opened in 1984, Route 66 lost most of its traffic. Tourists didn't take the old road anymore. They raced down the highway, bypassing the small motels and gas stations. The buyer was David Chen, an investor from Las Vegas. He paid $120,000 a fire sale price for 16 rooms and a plot of land. Chen planned to convert the motel into a roadside souvenir shop. Route 66, nostalgia, kitsch, tourist traps. The plans never panned out. Chen went bankrupt in 2009. The motel passed to the bank, then to a new owner, then to another. By 2015, the neon oasis stood abandoned, busted windows, peeling paint, a neon sign that hadn't lit up in 10 years. The flower bed where the pool had been was overgrown with weeds. But the roots never broke through the concrete underground. Silas Vance spent his final years in a nursing home in Barstow. He moved there in 2015 when he could no longer live alone. The nurses described him as a quiet, pleasant patient. He didn't complain, didn't demand special attention, didn't cause problems. Sometimes he sat in the garden for hours, staring at the mountains in the distance. He died on March 12, 2019, heart failure, 81 years old. 7 people came to the funeral. 4 nursing home staffers, a priest, 2 former neighbors from Essex. Vance was cremated per his will, drawn up in 2010. His ashes were scattered in the desert, not far from where his motel once stood. The obituary in the local paper read, "Silas Vance, 81, former owner of the Neon Oasis Motel, passed peacefully, no surviving relatives." All that time, the case of Michael and Linda Dawson remained open. Officially, an unsolved disappearance in the Mojave County Police Archives, a folder full of statements, photos, reports. Every few years, some detective would flip through it as part of a cold case review. Nothing new ever turned up. Detective Ray Thornton retired in 2004. He died in 2017, never knowing that the young couple he'd been searching for had been lying 200 yards from where he'd talked to Vance. Harold Mason, the private investigator Richard Connolly had hired, died in 2012. His son, going through his father's files, found a folder labeled "Dawson's Not Closed." Inside photos, notes, a route map with markings. On the last page in Mason's handwriting, "Someone knows, someone saw, but who?" Janice Dawson kept placing the ad in the paper every year on July 14th. By 2020, the format had changed. Print papers were dying, and she'd switched to an online classifieds board. Same text, same photo, same phone number. Michael Dawson, 23, and Linda Dawson, 21. Missing since July 14th, 1990, last seen in Arizona. Dark blue, 1968 Ford Mustang. Any information, please. By 2024, the ad was 34 years old. Janice was 82. She lived in a nursing home in Bridgeport, the same neighborhood where her son had grown up. Her memory was slipping, but every July she remembered, post the ad. Patricia Connolly, 85, lived in an apartment in Evanston. On the wall, a photo of her daughter in the $40 wedding dress. Every morning, Patricia looked at it and said, "Good morning, sweetheart." Both women had been waiting for an answer they hadn't received in 34 years. The answer came in October 2024. On October 3, 2024, a group of investors from Los Angeles closed on the purchase of the abandoned Neon Oasis Motel. The company was called Route 66 Revival LLC. 3 partners, Jason Park, Megan O'Brien, and Tyler Ross, specialized in restoring historic sites along America's old highways. They'd already turned an abandoned gas station in Texas into a popular bar, and a crumbling motel in New Mexico into a boutique hotel for retro enthusiasts. The Neon Oasis was their most ambitious project yet. 16 rooms, a restaurant, a guitar-shaped pool, the perfect spot for tourists looking for the real America. They paid $85,000, less than a studio apartment in LA. Work began on October 20th. Phase 1, clearing the property, trash, weeds, leftover furniture. Phase 2, structural assessment. What could be saved? What needed to go? Phase 3, restoring the pool. The pool was the key element of the project. Megan O'Brien had found old photos in the local newspaper's archive. Blue water, white lounge chairs, the guitar shape, the perfect Instagram shot. But instead of a pool, there was a flower bed on the lot. Overgrown, neglected, but still recognizable. The investors hired a crew to dig it out. The foreman was Miguel Santiago, 43, owner of a small construction company in Barstow. He'd worked with Route 66 Revival on a previous project and knew what they expected. Fast, quality work, on budget. He had a crew of 4, 2 diggers, a mini excavator operator, and a laborer. They arrived at the site on October 23rd, a Wednesday, at 7 a.m. Temperature 60 degrees, sky clear, wind none. Perfect day for the job. The first 2 hours went to marking. Santiago checked the site plan, the original, from 1975, and outlined the boundaries of the former pool, 40 feet long, 20 feet wide. At 9:30, the mini excavator bit into the ground. By noon, they'd removed the top layer, about 3 feet of soil and roots. Underneath, they hit concrete. That was expected. The flower bed had been poured over the old pool. Santiago figured the pool floor was still there. They just needed to break through the concrete cap and clean out the basin. At 1 p.m., the excavator punched through. The bucket dropped deeper than it should have. There was a void under the concrete. Santiago stopped the work. He walked to the edge of the hole, shined his flashlight down. "Madre de Dios," he said. Beneath the layer of soil and concrete was a chamber, not the pool floor, a separate space, dug into the ground and encased in concrete on all sides. Dimensions roughly 20 by 12 feet, about 8 feet high, big enough to fit a car. And there was a car inside, a dark blue 1968 Ford Mustang, covered in a thin layer of dust but remarkably preserved. The chrome gleamed in the flashlight beam. The white stripes on the hood looked like they'd been painted yesterday. There was a person behind the wheel, another one beside him. Santiago stepped back from the edge. His hands were shaking. "Call the cops," he told the nearest worker. "Now." First patrol units arrived at 1:47 p.m. Officers Daniel Cruz and Maria Estrada from the Barstow Police Department. They cordoned off the area, interviewed the workers, called in detectives and forensics. By 3 p.m., 12 people were working the scene. Investigators, techs, a photographer, the coroner. Yellow tape reading, "Police line do not cross," surrounded the entire former motel property. Detective Rachel Kim, 38 San Bernardino County homicide, led the investigation. She climbed down into the chamber on a ladder, examined the car without touching it, looked inside. 2 bodies, mummified, skin dark, dried, stretched over bone, hair preserved, clothing white, formal. They were sitting in the front seats, the man behind the wheel, the woman beside him. Their hands were intertwined, his right and her left resting on the center console. They were dressed in wedding attire. He wore a black suit with a white boutonniere. She wore a knee-length white dress with lace trim. The license plate confirmed what Kim already suspected: Illinois. 1990 registration, owner Michael Dawson, Chicago. Kim went back up and called Central Records. 20 minutes later, they called back. Got a match. Missing persons case, July 1990. Michael and Linda Dawson, newlyweds from Chicago. Disappeared somewhere between Arizona and California. Case still open. Kim looked at the flower bed, what was left of it. 34 years. 34 years they'd been lying here, 200 yards from Route 66, while cars drove past, while motel guests slept in their rooms, while Silas Vance smiled and wished everyone safe travels. By evening, forensics had recovered the first pieces of evidence: a diary in the glove compartment, a leather notebook, 63 pages of entries. 3. 2 suitcases in the trunk clothes, toiletries, a road map, documents in the man's wallet, a driver's license in the name of Michael Dawson. The bodies were left in place until the medical examiner's team arrived. The coroner's preliminary assessment: natural mummification caused by the dry climate in the airtight chamber, cause of death unknown pending autopsy. But one detail stood out: the wedding clothes. Michael and Linda Dawson had gotten married at City Hall in Gary, Indiana. She wore a $40 thrift store dress. He wore his only suit. The dress on Linda's mummified body was worth at least $1,000. Silk, hand embroidery, handmade lace. Michael's suit, Italian cut, expensive fabric. Not the suit he'd gotten married in. Someone had changed their clothes after they died. The autopsy was performed on October 26th at the San Bernardino County morgue. Dr. Elizabeth Chang, the chief medical examiner, worked on the bodies for 8 hours. The mummification complicated the analysis, but the preservation allowed her to establish the key facts. Michael Dawson, male, 23 years old at time of death, height 6'1", cause of death stab wound to the neck. The blade severed the carotid artery. Death occurred within 2 to 3 minutes from blood loss. Linda Dawson, female, 21 years old, height 5'6", cause of death asphyxiation, signs of manual strangulation on the neck, hyoid bone fractured. Under the fingernails of her right hand, fragments of skin and dried blood. Linda fought back. She scratched her killer. Timeline of death, established from the condition of the bodies and on-site evidence. Linda died first. She was killed in room 14. Blood traces on the floor matched spatter patterns consistent with strangulation. Her body was moved to the pool later. Michael was killed second. He was killed outside, at the edge of the pool. Blood traces on the concrete, washed away but visible under UV light. Knife to the neck from behind, unexpected. He never had a chance to defend himself. Both bodies were moved to the car and placed in the seats, hands intertwined, the pose staged. Then they were redressed. Detective Rachel Kim studied Linda's diary for 4 days. The entries from the final days, July 17th through 21st, painted a picture of methodical manipulation, the missing keys, the photo of Linda sleeping, the car that started and didn't start, the earring under the rug, Michael's late-night talks with Vance. Kim saw the pattern. Every strange occurrence wasn't random, it was part of a plan. Someone had been deliberately destroying Linda's trust in her husband. The last entry? Silas said, Silas, the motel owner, the man who helped look for the keys, who fixed the car, who brought dinner and talked about true love. Kim pulled every record on Silas Vance. Born 1938, died 2019, never arrested, never suspected. Buried, or rather, cremated with a reputation as a good man. Reconstructing the events of July 21st and 22nd, 1990, took 3 weeks. Kim worked with forensics, criminal profilers, archival records. Every fragment of evidence added a detail to the picture. The evening of July 21st, Linda in the room, scared, exhausted, not trusting her husband. Michael doesn't understand what's happening. They argue. Vance shows up with dinner, or wine, or an excuse to check the AC. He enters the room when Michael isn't there. He's gone to the car, or to the bathroom, or to get some air. Linda is alone with Vance. What he said to her, unknown. The last entry cuts off at, Silas said, but the words must have been convincing. Convincing enough that a woman already afraid of her own husband believed her life was in danger. Kim reconstructed the sequence from traces in the room. Linda tried to run. An overturned chair, a shifted rug, drag marks from the door to the bed. Vance caught her, knocked her down, started strangling her. Linda scratched at him. Her nails dug into the skin of his arms, those same fragments under her nails, preserved for 34 years. Vance squeezed until she stopped fighting. Then he heard footsteps outside. Michael was coming back. Michael had no idea what was happening in the room. He opened the door and saw Vance standing over his wife's body. What did he do? Charge the killer? Scream? Back away? The evidence said he ran toward the car. Toward his only chance to escape and get help. Vance caught him at the pool, knife to the neck from behind. Michael fell. The Mustang's chrome reflected the stars above the desert. He died a few feet from the car he'd spent 4 years restoring. The car that was supposed to take them to the ocean. Then Vance got to work. He moved the bodies to the prepared chamber dug beforehand, lined with concrete. The chamber was at the bottom of the drained pool, hidden from view. He drove the Mustang into the chamber down a wooden ramp. He placed the bodies in the seats, intertwined their hands. Then he left and came back with clothes. An expensive wedding dress, an Italian suit. Where he got them, unknown. Maybe he'd kept them for years, waiting for the right couple. Maybe he bought them specifically for the Dawsons. He undressed the dead and dressed them again. Criminal psychologist Dr. Margaret Wallace, brought in as a consultant, compiled a profile. Vance wasn't an ordinary killer. He was a director. It wasn't just about killing, it was about creating a scene, creating an image. Newlyweds in wedding clothes, holding hands in a car. This isn't murder, it's an installation. A monument to what he considered eternal love. The diary entries show he deliberately destroyed the victim's relationship before their death. He wanted Linda to fear her husband. Why? Possibly it heightened his sense of power. He shattered their love-living real to replace it with his own version. Dead, motionless, eternal. After the murders, Vance sealed the chamber with concrete. The work took several days, maybe a week. He did it all himself, at night, when there were no guests, layer by layer. First the walls, then the ceiling. The cement mixer sat in his workshop behind the motel. Nobody asked why he needed so much concrete. By the end of July, the pool floor looked normal. Blue tile, empty basin. The secret lay 3 feet below. In 2000, when he filled the pool with dirt, he added another layer of protection. 3 feet of soil, bushes and flowers. Nobody would ever dig up a flower bed for no reason. Vance lived another 19 years after that. He sold the motel, moved to a nursing home, died in his bed. He took the secret with him, or thought he did. Linda Dawson died believing her husband was killing her. That was the conclusion Kim couldn't prove, but which followed from the diary. The final entries were full of fear of Michael, suspicion, doubt. Vance had planted it all in her head methodically, patiently, day by day. When he started strangling her, she might not have even been surprised. Her husband, or the man she now believed was dangerous, was finally doing what she'd feared. She didn't know that Michael was outside at that moment, that he had no idea what was happening, that he loved her just as much as on their wedding day. Michael died trying to reach the car, maybe to drive for help, maybe to save his wife, who was already beyond saving. They died a few yards apart, separated by lies the killer had planted between them. Then he joined their hands and sealed them in concrete forever. DNA analysis of the skin fragments from under Linda Dawson's fingernails took 11 days. Bode Technology Lab in Virginia, specializing in cold cases, received the samples on October 30th. The material was degraded. 34 years in a dry climate had preserved the form but destroyed some of the genetic markers. The techs had to use NP profiling, a more accurate method for old samples. On November 10th, the results went to Detective Kim. DNA profile: male, European descent, age at time of victim's death 50 to 60 years old. Matches in the CODIS database 0. Silas Vance had never been arrested. His DNA wasn't in any database. Kim turned to genetic genealogy. The method had become a breakthrough in forensics after 2018, when it was used to catch the Golden State Killer. The concept is simple. Upload a DNA profile to public databases, find distant relatives, build a family tree, zero in on the suspect. Parabon Nanolabs took the case. By November 20th, they had a list of 14 possible relatives, third cousins, fourth cousins, fifth cousins. All descended from families in Central California, the Bakersfield area. Genealogist Carrie Simmons started building the tree. Births, deaths, marriages, relocations. Hundreds of names going back to the 19th century. By December 5th, the tree converged on a single point: Silas Vance, born 1938 in Bakersfield. Only child of Henry and Margaret Vance. Never married, no children, died in 2019. The DNA under Linda Dawson's fingernails belonged to him. Detective Kim faced a problem. The suspect was dead, 5 years dead, cremated, ashes scattered. Couldn't be arrested, couldn't be interrogated, couldn't be tried, but the case could be closed. On December 12, 2024, the San Bernardino County Police held a press conference. Kim stood at the podium. Behind her, a screen with 2 photos, Michael and Linda Dawson, the wedding picture from Gary City Hall, 1990. After 34 years, we can inform the Dawson families that their children have been found. We have identified the killer. It was Silas Vance, former owner of the motel where the couple stopped in July 1990. Vance died in 2019. He was never a suspect during his lifetime. Reporters started asking questions. Kim answered tersely, sticking to the facts. Motive? Presumably a mental disorder, an obsession with the idea of eternal love. Other victims? The investigation is ongoing. Why wasn't he found sooner? Vance was careful. He left no traces. He lived a normal life. After the press conference, Kim made 2 phone calls. The first to a nursing home in Bridgeport, Chicago. Janice Dawson, 82 years old, sat in a wheelchair by the window. A nurse brought her the phone. "Mrs. Dawson, this is Detective Rachel Kim from California. I'm calling about your son." A pause on the other end. "Did you find him?" "Yes, ma'am. We found Michael and his wife." Janice was silent for several seconds. Then she asked, "Did he suffer?" Kim remembered the medical examiner's report. Stab wound to the neck, death from blood loss, 2 to 3 minutes. No, ma'am, he didn't suffer. It was a lie. But some lies are mercy. The second call to Evanston, Illinois. Patricia Connolly answered after the first ring. 85 years old, but her voice was clear. Detective Kim, I saw the news. I know. Mrs. Connolly, I'm so sorry. Don't. No apologies. Just tell me one thing. A pause. Was she with him? At the end? Kim thought of the mummified bodies in the car, the intertwined hands, a staged pose arranged by the killer. Yes, ma'am. She was with him. Patricia started crying. But the tears were strange, not just grief. Something else. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude. She loved him. I always knew. Richard didn't believe it, but I knew. The following week, forensics returned to the Neon Oasis property with ground-penetrating radar. If Vance had killed the Dawsons, had he killed before? The scan took 3 days. Every square foot of the property had 16 rooms, the restaurant, the workshop, the parking lot. Results: 4 anomalies, 4 spots where the radar showed voids or inconsistencies in the ground. First anomaly under the floor of room 6. Excavation revealed a concrete slab that didn't match the original foundation. Under the slab remains 1 skeleton, female, 30 to 40 years old. Second anomaly behind the workshop. A shallow grave about 3 feet down, 2 skeletons, male and female, 20 to 30 years old. Third anomaly by the fence at the edge of the property. Fragmented remains, at least 2 individuals. Fourth anomaly under the concrete foundation of the abandoned gas station. Excavation ongoing. Kim stood at the edge of the pit, watching the anthropologists work. 6 bodies minimum, possibly more. Burials from different periods. Preliminary estimates spanned from the mid-70s to the late 90s. Vance owned the motel from 1970 to 2005, 35 years. How many people stopped at the Neon Oasis and never left? How many missing persons had actually been lying under the pool's blue tile, under the floors of the rooms behind the workshop? Kim remembered psychologist Wallace's words. It was about creating a scene. The Dawsons weren't the first, and most likely not the last. By January 2025, the first remains were identified. The skeleton under the floor of room 6, Carla Rivera, 29 years old, a waitress from Phoenix, missing since August 1978. On her way to LA to see her sister, the couple behind the workshop, Daniel and Susan Moreno, 31 and 28 years old, newlyweds from Denver, missing since June 1983, honeymoon on Route 66, newlyweds, like the Dawsons. Kim started checking the archives of missing couples in the Southwest from 1970 to 2000. The list was long. The Neon Oasis Motel was closed as a crime scene. Route 66 Revival LLC terminated the deal. Jason Park told reporters, "We were buying history, not that kind of history." The property was cordoned off. Excavations continued through the winter. The neon sign, the same one, pink and green, lay in the dirt by the entrance. The Neon Oasis, vacancy. The letters cracked, the tubes long dead. Vacancy, rooms available. Silas Vance filled them his own way. The funeral for Michael and Linda Dawson was held on January 18, 2025. Rose Hill Cemetery, north side of Chicago. Gray January sky, temperature 18 degrees, light snow. 2 caskets side by side in the same grave. Janice Dawson came in a wheelchair. A nurse from the nursing home pushed her along the cleared path between the headstones. Janice was 82 years old. She weighed 90 pounds. She'd barely eaten for weeks. Patricia Connolly stood across from her, leaning on the arm of her great niece, 85 years old, but she insisted on standing. My daughter deserves to have me stand. They hadn't seen each other in 34 years. After the ceremony, Patricia walked over to Janice. They looked at each other in silence. 2 old women who had lost their children, 2 mothers who had waited a lifetime for answers. Patricia spoke first. My husband was wrong. About your son. Janice nodded, slowly, with effort. I know. He loved her, truly. Yes. Patricia took Janice's hand. Cold fingers closed around cold fingers. They're together, Patricia said. Finally together. Janice Dawson died on February 11, 2025, in her sleep, quietly, without pain. The nurse found her in the morning. She lay in bed, covered by a blanket, her face peaceful. On the nightstand by the bed stood a framed photograph. Michael and Linda's wedding picture, the one from Gary City Hall. The $40 dress, the only suit, the two witnesses, the happy faces. Janice had put it there after the funeral. She told the nurse, "Now I can look at them." She was buried next to her husband, Walter, across the road from her son's grave. Patricia Connolly outlived her by 7 months. She died in September 2025 in her apartment in Evanston. Heart failure. She was 86 years old. In her will, she left instructions: sell the apartment, donate the money to a victims assistance fund. The only personal item she asked to be kept her daughter's wedding photo, the one that had hung on the living room wall. The photo was given to the Connolly family archive. Linda's cousin's daughter, Emily, hung it in her home. "I never knew Aunt Linda," she told reporters, "but I want her to be remembered." By March 2025, the remains of 11 people had been found on the Neon Oasis property. 8 were identified. Carla Rivera, 29 years old, missing since 1978. Daniel and Susan Moreno, 31 and 28 years old, missing since 1983. Thomas Bell, 45 years old, a traveling salesman from Texas, missing since 1987. Amanda Crane, 23 years old, a college student from San Diego, missing since 1992. Robert and Jennifer Hunt, 30 and 27 years old, newlyweds from Seattle, missing since 1995. Michael and Linda Dawson, missing since 1990. 3 remained unidentified. Fragmented remains, not enough DNA for comparison. Their families may never learn the truth. Detective Rachel Kim continued working the case. She pulled the archives of missing persons on Route 66 from 1970 to 2005. Hundreds of names, dozens of unsolved disappearances. Not all of them were Vance's victims. People go missing for all kinds of reasons, but some of the patterns were too precise. Couples, young couples traveling by car, honeymoons, anniversaries, romantic road trips, last known locations somewhere between Needles and Barstow. Vance chose them. He watched them the way he watched the Dawsons, with that same quiet, patient obsession. "True love is rare," he told Linda. He collected rarities. In May 2025, a memorial plaque was installed at the motel site. A simple bronze plate on a stone pedestal. In memory of the victims whose lives ended here: Michael Dawson, Linda Dawson, Carla Rivera, Daniel Moreno, Susan Moreno, Thomas Bell, Amanda Crane, Robert Hunt, Jennifer Hunt, and others whose names remain unknown. May they rest in peace. The ceremony was quiet. The victims' families, a few reporters, Detective Kim. No speeches, no cameras, just a moment of silence. After the ceremony, Emily, Linda's niece, approached Kim. "You found them," she said. "Thank you." Kim shook her head. "The excavator found them. I just figured out what happened. That's more than we had for 34 years. The dark blue 1968 Ford Mustang was transferred to the police evidence archive. The car sat in storage 40 feet under fluorescent lights, surrounded by evidence from other cases. The chrome had dulled after months on the surface. The white stripes on the hood had gathered dust. Inside, emptiness. The bodies had been removed, the evidence collected, the seat sent for analysis. But if you knew where to look, you could still see the traces. A dent in the steering wheel, where Michael had gripped it for the last time. A scratch on the dashboard, where Linda had set her diary before stepping out of the car that final night. A handprint on the glass, faded, barely visible, but still there. Traces of people who loved each other, traces that even concrete couldn't erase. In July 2025, on the 35th anniversary of the disappearance, Emily came to Rose Hill Cemetery. She brought flowers, white roses like at Linda's wedding. She laid them on the headstone. The inscription on the stone was simple: Michael Dawson, 1967 to 1990, Linda Dawson, 1969 to 1990, together forever. Emily stood at the grave, looking at the names. She thought about the things she would never know, about the final days at the motel, about Linda's fear, about Michael's helplessness, about the man who destroyed their trust in each other and then destroyed them. She thought about the diary, about the words her aunt had written 35 years ago. "This is it. This is happiness. Remember this moment." Linda remembered. And now Emily remembered too. The sun was setting behind the trees. Shadows fell across the headstones. Emily turned and walked to her car. Behind her, the wind stirred the petals of the white roses. Somewhere far away in the Mojave Desert, a neon sign was rusting. The neon oasis, vacancy. No vacancies anymore.